Hey gang, it's your buddy Work. Welcome back to D&D Hobbyist. Now this one's going to be the first installment of talking about Rime of the Frost Maiden. So I am running Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frost Maiden, a published adventure for Dungeons and Dragons. We're doing the 5 point whatever, 5.5 or 1 D&D or whatever they call it. The new upgraded rules that just came out, I think in 2024, whenever they came out. So we're doing those just to keep current and keep moving. I don't really have any opinions yet. All I really have is the Forgotten Realms and the core set. But we are running Rime of the Frost Maiden, so a lot of those things I'm switching out. So I'm switching the Durgar to the new one, and I'm switching the Bandits to the new one, and stuff like that. So I am converting a lot of the stuff to the new rules, if possible. If not, then they're staying with the original 5e rules. So that's what's going on there. So I'm starting off with 5 players. So I have Aviv and his wife, Jennifer. They are playing, Aviv's playing a fighter, human fighter with a polearm, and Jennifer's playing a Hexblade Warlock. I also have Jake, who is playing a Dragonborn Cleric. I have Connor, who's playing Human Rogue, and I have Gabe, who is playing a Paladin. I'm using the secrets. I gave everybody the option. They could take 2 secrets. If they took 2 secrets, they could get a common or uncommon. Common or uncommon, I think. And I made a big list, and we rolled on that. Everybody wanted the 2 secrets. Nobody chose not to go with the secrets. They wanted the extra gear. So everybody got 2 secrets, and I had paired up the secrets. So they got secrets that went together. So like Connor's Rogue got the author, the runaway author or whatever. So he had published a book about devils, and now he was being hunted by the followers of those devils. And then he was also like a spy. So he's an agent of the Harpers, right? And what was... so Gabe's, his was, I forget one of them, but he was reincarnated. So he got reincarnated by a druid. So he's a halfling now. He's a halfling paladin, but he used to be a human. He was like a local human. So he got reincarnated as a paladin. And I forget what the other one was. I don't remember. Jennifer's, she's the runaway prisoner. So she was imprisoned on the Mind Flayer ship that crashed, and she also has a slot egg inside of her. So she's a ticking time bomb with the slot, and she's an amnesiac hero and stuff. So that works well for her. So everybody got 2 secrets, and yeah, so we started, level 1. Nobodies. I basically told they made their characters, and then I told the story of how their characters got to be in Icewind Dale. Some are indigenous, some are transplants. It was the same story of Icewind Dale. It's the end of the road, so a lot of people wind up there when they don't have anywhere else to go, and that sort of thing. So I kind of gave them the stories of why they were there, and also how they knew one another. So they all had one tie to someone else in the party. So that's it was like a friend of a friend kind of thing. So then they all came together, and so we started in on chapter 1. I gave them some... Well, first of all, I'm glad to be back in the Forgotten Realms. My favorite, my baby, the Forgotten Realms. I love them. Icewind Dale, right up here, right up the very tippy top. You can't really see where my hand is, but it's up there, I promise. And, yeah, feels good, man. I know a lot of stuff, and I can answer questions, and I can spew lore at them just off the top of my head, just because I was reading that stuff as a nerdy kid in middle school and high school. reading all the Salvatore books and Doug Niles and all the different stuff. So, I gave them some information about the realms and kind of how the realms worked, and about like the powers of the realms, like the deities, and kind of how they form into, like, you have the greater and then you have the lesser, and the lesser are active in the world and the greater are more, deific, they're more omniscient and all powerful and things like that, so they don't really interact with the people so much. But I gave them the story of Oral, I gave them the story of the Rime, and they're up there, and so they all came together in Bryn Shander. I started them in Bryn Shander, and they, they all, because of their secrets and because of where they started, so they all started in towns, the different towns around there. So whenever they came together as a party, basically every one of them already had the starting quest for that town. So like Lamplighter, which was Aviv, he came from Tourmaline. So from Tourmaline, he knew that there were kobolds in the mine and it needed to get cleared out. And he'd gone to Bryn Shander to try to find more people, right? So it was kind of like that. Like everybody had their own quest that they couldn't do by themselves, and they all came together, right? So the rogue Harper agent that hates devils, he knew about like the devil cultists that were in Caer Dineval, right? And he's like, "Ooh, we can't do that. We're going to have to do some other stuff first to get some gear and some power and some experience, and then we can come back and help them," right? So everybody kind of came together in Bryn Shander and met a little bit, and then we kind of started ticking off the quests, and everything's gone really well. I read all of these horror stories online about how Icewind Dale just murders parties and stuff. And the only time I ever really got close to that was whenever they were going up Kelvin's Cairn, and they were in an avalanche. And the avalanche was very unforgiving for level 1 players, I tell you that. Level 1 characters. Oh my god. So, yeah, that was probably the closest. We had one really close to dying in the avalanche, and I let them recover that person, and everything was okay. I say let. I just, you can create the situation so that they're able to succeed and save somebody. He could have just been swept away and they just never saw him again. But it was like, yeah, roll above a 15 on a dex save and you can grab their hand kind of thing. So they were able to. So they deserve to succeed, right? So, yeah, I think I had a realization while we were playing this, and that's, role playing to me is more about your character, their background, and their ideals and flaws and bonds, and playing according to that, alignment, like getting in your character's head and making your decisions based on that. Role playing to me isn't chatting back and forth with people in the bar. It's not, yes, that is the definition of role playing, right? You're your character and you're interacting with the world, right? But that's, it is role playing, but that's more improv than anything else, right? So I do a little bit of that. I do a little bit of talking back and forth, and I do a little bit of haggling with merchants, and I do a little bit of that sort of thing, and quest givers and reward givers and all of that sort of thing. So at this point, they've met a lot of the speakers of the different towns, and, the militia captain, and the head of this, and the representative of that, and what have you. But role-playing to me is much more about like the driving force behind the character, like making big moves based on what that character would want to do or what that character's overarching goals are. So I kind of I had that conversation with him also, because if there's something good that can come out of like that interactive role play, then I'll play that out and see if they can convince somebody that they're sincere, or, find something out, or, befriend, turn them from neutral to friendly, and then now they'll get a little bit of extra stuff. Like, I'll play that stuff out too. but it was more, I right when we first started, I said, I really want people to be heroes. Like, I want you to be good guys. And I think this group especially has really embraced that. And all of their characters are really trying to help people. And they're trying to help all these people that are cold and starving in the dark in like the remote wilderness and all of that. And I haven't gotten that much of a horror vibe. I mean, they've talked to, ghosts, and they've done like there are horror elements, but it's a D&D, they're fighting, giants and ogres and goblins and stuff like that. So, I mean, they're not really, it is dark, but I don't think it's especially spooky yet. But so I guess the quest that they did in order was the first thing they did was the Bryn Shander quest, and they went out and they saved the iron ingots. So they fought the goblins and recovered the iron ingots, and that was a fun battle because they were level 1 and it was very challenging. And at the very end, the goblin boss, I just kept rolling like ones and twos and ones and twos, and he just kept like comically failing at everything. So like the party was not using very good tactics. Like they were not really protecting themselves very well, but everybody else was rolling terribly. So there was be all these arrows shot at them, and they're like, I'm dead, I'm dead, I'm dead, and every one of them would miss. And then like like Aviv remembered like he could use cover. So like he ran and got cover, and it was stuff like that. So then the cover was saving him and things. But it basically ended with the goblin boss who had like a huge torch to signal his buddies falling into his wagon, and the wagon was consumed by flames, and the polar bears ran away pulling this flaming wagon because they're scared of fire or whatever. So they were able to overcome that one. They were able to recover the dog sled and the iron ingots for the Valley Dwarves. They brought those back, but they knew it was a Yeti that had caused the damage to the dwarves. It wasn't the goblins. So they knew it was a Yeti, and then the origin story for the warlock was that they had so she wandered out of the crashed ship, right? So she didn't really remember much of that. She just remembered like generic alien abduction stuff, the bright lights and the creatures with big eyes standing over her, and fear, being paralyzed with fear. And so there was the big crash, and she wandered out of the tundra or whatever, and she had found a sled dog, a giant dog like a Wolfstat, and the giant dog led her back to Targos and went to their front door, and it was the guy that you need to rescue in the quest for Targos. I forget his name, and his spouse was there. So she had met him and the spouse, and then she had gone to Bryn Shander to get more people to help go save this guy. Like, she just didn't know anything, didn't remember anything, but she just jumped onto this quest because like the dog befriended her and saved her, and then this was the spouse of the owner of the dog, and they needed help. So at this point it's been like a day and a half. So they go up Kelvin's cairn, they get in the avalanche, get their ass kicked. Eventually they were able to find the Yeti and fight the Yeti, and it was a big fight. It was a hard fight. I think they were still level 1. I wanted them to do 2 things at level 1 before they leveled, and they were able to pull that off. So they fought the Yeti, and then whenever they're leaving, the Yeti's mate comes back, but it did give them some gear, and they were able to bring everything back. What did they do next? They made it back to Bryn Shander. They're friends with the Black Iron Blades or whatever. They befriended the 2 dwarves there. I explained to them that the blades were of poor quality, and and they didn't really know why, and they kind of were like, well, we'll see if we can figure something out, you know. They did that one. They did the tourmaline mines with the kobolds. That was fun. They did pretty much all of them at this point. They did the unseen, where they got to go out and kill the Durgar, remove the Durgar from the outpost. They killed Nildar Sunblight, and I gave him a +1 war pick, so now they have a +1 war pick, and I think I gave him half plate, so like one of them has half plate now. I think the Paladin has half plate. So they did that. That was the Halfling's quest. So the Halfling, so his secret was that he was reincarnated. The reason he was reincarnated was he was a human paladin. He was investigating the thefts in Caer Konig, and he figured out that it was Durgar and was investigating. The Durgar murdered him. So the druid found him dead in the snow and reincarnated him, and that's why he's a halfling. He still hasn't really shared that secret, so he and I know it, and we make reference to it, but he hasn't shared it with the rest of the party, so they don't exactly know, but his family all fled, so there's no family there to give away his secret, but, you know, like, whenever they went back to Caer Konig, they're like, Hinding! Oh, Hinding, you know, again, I'm so sorry about what happened to you, and he's like, yeah, you know, we're doing the best we can. So, like, it never really came out. So it's kind of fun. Like, I really like the secrets. What else did they do? So we just did the black swords. We just did the devil cult in Caer Dineval. Like, just did it. Before they went to Caer Dineval, they stopped by Goodmead to get some mead, and they fell into the Goodmead quest, and we did that. I've been seeding rumors for the chapter 2 stuff, so they've got a good bit of that, and yeah, it's just going really well. I do have one player that hasn't been showing very much. It's the same guy who didn't equip his high level character at the end of the last campaign, so I think he's just not into it as much as the rest of us, so I don't know exactly what I'm going to do about that. He didn't put a whole lot into creating his character, and then he's been absent a lot. So the next session he's supposed to be there, and I'm going to see kind of how that goes, and then I'll make a decision whether to ask him to bow out or I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, it's going really well. I like it. There's some I made it so the rhyme isn't that new. I also, you know, I try to tie things back to the character so it connects with them instead of them just having a story, you know. It's like they all came with the chapter 1 quest for the towns. So it's like that's like their main goal. You know, the guy that gets sacrificed, the Dune or Droon or whatever his name is, the Red Wizard or the ex-Red Wizard or whatever he was, you know, it's he for East Haven, he gets like burned at the stake in East Haven. I had them meet up with him and transport him from Bryn Shander to East Haven, and he was able to give them some information, so I'm setting the stage for that future, the Netherese thing, and just some local information and kind of how magic works and stuff. So they were like, oh, wizard, we don't have a wizard in the party, you know, tell us stuff. And he told them stuff, and then he also asked them about stuff, so they gave up a little bit of information themselves and kind of what's been going on. And he was like, oh, yeah, you know, well, whenever you're done with whatever it is you're doing in Caer Dineval, you know, if you come back through East Haven, you know, I'm always hiring, you know, escorts for my archaeological expeditions, you know, up into the north, you know, and, you know, we've had some success and I need to pay some people, but But whenever you come back through, I'll definitely be hiring, and you can lead me out there. And they're like, oh, okay. Like, they're like, quest hook, quest hook, quest hook. They go to Caerdinaval, and whenever they come back, dude's being burned at the stake. They're like, what the fuck? This guy was going to hire. They're like, oh, yeah, no. What he would do is he would sign people on to take him out into the tundra, and then he would murder them and steal their gear and everything. He's a murderer. Like, it's too bad. We actually heard that he was successful with finding some sites out there, but he killed the people so that he would be the only one who knew where the sites were. So oh well, and it was just like they're like, "Whoo, we dodged a bullet there," So instead of just they come and they see this guy being burned at the stake. They had this interaction with him, and then they thought they knew who he was, and they thought they knew what was going to happen, and we did like a switcheroo, and then again, like, they got information from, that's the militia leader that they talked to. So it kind of, I don't know, I think that's just kind of the way that I run the game. I want them to feel immersed in the story. I want them to be able to interact with the story at times other than when there are action items, right? So that's kind of what I'm doing there, and I think that's really helping. Like, I think that's really helping the story. I'm hoping the next thing we do is like Id Ascendant, the crash ship, so that we could get into the Warlock's secrets. They don't really have an idea that they want to do. They kind of just want to, like, go out into the tundra looking around. And it's like, they already have the Black Cabin quest. They've learned, 4 or 5 other quests, one of them being the Id Ascendant, like the crash ship. After they killed Nildar, they got the note about his brother and Durgar in East Haven at the ferry, and they asked about the ferry, and they're like, oh yeah, the ferry's, it's all iced in, it's not running at all. And they were like, oh, and then they never investigated that. So the very last thing we did was also in East Haven, the thing with the hag. So they did the hag quest and got the Cauldron of Plenty and brought it back, and they gave it to the town, or they sold it to the town of East Haven. So now that that's there, they went back to Bryn Shander. So while they're in Bryn Shander this time, trying to figure out what to do, and they're going to head out. I'm gonna try to delay them and get them to stay there a day. And after they've stayed there a day, they're going to hear about the Cauldron of Plenty being stolen, and hopefully that'll piss them off, and they'll go back to East Haven. That's kind of my plan right now. I'm gonna tell a little story. I've been listening to a lot of short fantasy and sci-fi, and the most recent one was a Larry Niven story. I think they're all from like Amazing Tales or Weird Tales or Tales of Fantasy or whatever. It's like pulp short stories. They're all like an hour or 2 hours long. But this Larry Niven story, it's like a lion in his attic, and it's like, oh, Atlantis, and they're all were creatures and all this other stuff. And there's a guy who comes, and he has like a cat's eye emerald in his eye socket. He lost his eye and is wearing a patch, but he has a stolen gem inside of it, and he ran away with his father's mistress or whatever. So I'm gonna kind of work that in. So in Bryn Shander, they're gonna meet like a were orca, and this were orca is gonna be this big black guy who's there eating fish, and he's friends with the chef, and the chef's gonna be Lion, who's like a were sea lion that nobody really knows he's a were sea lion or a lycanthrope. And he's the cook at the inn in Bryn Shander where they always keep meeting up. And so I'm going to develop him as an NPC. So the orca will bring them the tale of whatever it is, Bell, Adjuran's Bell or whatever, the narwhal with the whatever on his back that takes people around and stuff. So like I'm going to kind of start to flesh out that area of the map through him. But then I'm also going to have that little side story of the thief pretending to be on a honeymoon with the courtesan from the court, and I'm going to tie that into Aviv's character's secret, which is that he's a descendant of the royal line of Neverwinter. So he's going to look just like this guy with the patch. So this guy is going to be, he's going to look not as strong and more handsome, but he has a patch. So in interacting with them, he's going to figure out, like, they're going to figure out who each other are, and that he is an heir to the bloodline of Neverwinter or whatever. And we'll see what happens with that. So I just kind of, I'm using that. I'm gonna file the serial numbers off of that Larry Niven story, and just use that to flesh out some of the NPCs in Bryn Shander and open up a secret and a chapter 2 quest, or a chapter 2/4 quest, 3 or 4 quest, whatever part Oral's Island is. So that's kind of the stuff I got going on right now. Work is crazy right now. I'm on mandatory 10 hours a day and Saturdays for the whole month of February. So luckily I did my February game on the 1st. So now I'm done with that, and I can just kind of put my shoulder to the grindstone and get through February, and then we'll have our March game at the beginning of March. And who knows, the next time I will send a video. I think it's been almost a year since my last video. But we are playing. I think we've only skipped maybe 1 month in that whole time. That's the good thing about playing monthly. The bad thing about playing monthly is that when you play, we play for like 5+ hours. And spouses freaking hate that, man. They hate that 5 hours on a Sunday, because like they lose you for a day. And it's only once a month. And like, I just had the discussion with my wife, and she's like, "You're just always doing this. You're always doing that." And I'm like, "It's once a month. It's one Sunday a month. It's really not that much." And she was like, "Well, this time it's once a month, but sometimes it's like 2 weeks apart." And I said, "No, it's once a month. So sometimes it's at the end of the month, and the next one will be at the beginning of the month, and they might be a week or two apart. But then the next one will be like 7 weeks away, because it's only once a month." And she couldn't believe it. And like, I showed her the calendar, and we went back through the calendar, and she kind of scratched her head. And it's just like, it would almost be better if it were just a couple hours, weekly. But I just don't think I could tell the story as well in short sessions. Like, I feel like that Sunday, that big chunk of time, I can really, like, we can get nestled in, like, we can get comfortable with that story, and you kind of, you're able to kind of put yourself into that mind frame, and I can set the mood. And, I always have like a scented candle, and it's like well lit, and, we're pretty comfortable, and, we have everything. Like, I got a fireplace in the living room like that. So with it being cold, January and February, we've had the fireplace going. Everybody's all nice and cozy, and like I said, it smells nice. And I use background music and ambient music to kind of help support the story whenever the story's doing things. So again, it's going really well. My party, they always have very complimentary things to say, and it always is very satisfying and gratifying for me to tell the story and have that feedback. Like I said, I may be looking for a new player. I am on a local Grand Rapids gaming group Discord, and they're always posting looking for players, looking for DMs and stuff like that. So I thought I might post out there, but again, I'm gonna let this March game go by and see if this reticent player, is able to show up, and if they're able to pay attention, because sometimes when they show up, they don't really pay attention either. So we'll see how that goes, and I guess more info to come on that. But right now, the people that show up are really into it, and it's going really well. Like I said, I haven't lost anybody. We haven't gotten, people go down, but then they get healed right back up. My biggest problem is getting enough players at the table, just with everything going on, and the weather's been very extreme this year. So But yeah, everything's good. That now will catch us up to where we are in my Sunday monthly campaign. Again, I'm your buddy Work, and I appreciate you watching my videos. If you're watching my videos, if you do, feel free to like and subscribe, comment. Any sort of engagement's appreciated by the algorithm. All hail the algorithm. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye. Game on.